So we're back here at White People Doing Something Facebook page. I went over these guys last week. If you didn't see the video,
check it out.
It was their stance on domestic violence. And if your neighbor is black and she's having the shit beat out of her by a black boyfriend, you probably shouldn't call the cops.
America would hate you.
Today's post is from Angel. Angel says, trigger warning, current events, sexual assault. It has obviously been discussed that calling 911 rarely de-escalates the situation and usually increases the danger for the black people in the room. But in regards to the rape that occurred on the public transit, obviously doing nothing was also wrong, and certainly just taping it was also wrong. She goes on to talk about how she feels that if she was there, she would have stepped up and done something, even if it was putting her own life at risk. He didn't rape her for the entire 45 minutes, she says. For the first 35 minutes, he looked like a guy getting too close for comfort. She was uncomfortable and was pushing him away, but didn't get up and move.
Sounds a bit like victim blaming.
It could be interpreted as a domestic violence disagreement.
If you saw my last week's video on these clowns talking about domestic violence and people of colour, you're going to understand that fucking comment.
During this time, calling 911 would have been an overreaction and potentially lead to, why did someone needlessly call 911? Look at the excessive violence from the cops. The actual assault lasted for 8 minutes before someone called 911. This is a white woman, a married white woman with a child, who I think is a girl. And this is her stance on a sexual assault. So this incident has attracted a lot of media attention. The New York Times writes, as a woman was raped, train riders failed to intervene, police say. The SEPTA train car near Philadelphia had several passengers aboard, but none called 911 while the woman was sexually assaulted. What the fuck? As a woman was being raped while on a train near Philadelphia on Wednesday night, riders watched, failed to intervene, and did not call 911. A man whom officials identified as Mr. Nagoy, this fuckwit, sat down next to a woman at about 10 p.m. on a train that was travelling westbound. The woman pushed back and tried to stop Mr. Nagoy from touching her. Then, unfortunately, he proceeded to rip her clothes off. The assault lasted about 8 minutes and no passengers in the train car intervened. Mr. Nagoy, 35, was charged with rape, sexual assault and aggravated indecent assault without consent, among other crimes, court records show. The authorities said Mr. Nagoy was homeless and was not armed during the attack. Several passengers were in the train car. There were enough of them collectively that they could have gotten together and done something. Look, even if you don't want to fucking go and confront this sort of shit, bare minimum call the cops. Bare fucking minimum you call the police. You see someone getting fucking sexually assaulted, what they're saying is he was touching her on the tits and shit and she was saying no and people just stood back and did nothing. He added the investigators had received reports of some passengers recording the attack on their phones, but the police had not confirmed that. The police have come out and said that's not true, but they've got footage from inside the train car of people holding their phones up towards the victim. So they've come out and said this now because they want people to come forward. And people are scared to come forward now because they're worried about getting in trouble.
You're a bunch of fucking scumbags.
That's what you are. Now the police are trying to...
Oh no, they didn't film it.
They fucking filmed it.
Eventually, a transportation authority employee got on the train, saw what was happening and called 911. Then a police officer ran onto the train, caught this man in the act and took him into custody. Alexis Piquero, a criminologist at the University of Miami, said there are several possible reasons that some crime witnesses do not intervene, such as fear of retaliation by the perpetrator and a belief that someone else will step in and help. He clearly hasn't seen the group White People Doing Something because they discuss this stuff at length and they all say if it's a person of colour, don't call the cops because,
you know,
critical race theory.
You're crazy in the coconut.
He goes on to say, by expecting someone else to help, we are basically washing our hands and absolving ourselves of that responsibility. We need a world where people are doing the right thing when you see someone assaulted. We really do hope that people will read this, will see the stories on TV, and will think about helping with the efforts of preventing incidences like this from happening. Angel goes on to say,
Our favourite white woman.
with all the answers to questions nobody fucking asked.
what so many people fail to realise is that for the first 40 minutes he harassed her, groped her, and she tried to push him away. In that time period, calling 911 would have been excessive. Crazy. And might have led to an overreaction by the cops. She's saying this after the fact. We know the police went on the train car and arrested the guy.
They didn't fucking execute him.
She's not using the thing between her fucking ears. Like, how dumb do you need to be to still be pushing this narrative when it's been fucking proven time and time again that you're fucking wrong?
It's ridiculous.
These people just don't fucking get it. And to be blaming the victim.
Well, she never moved, so, you know, like, fucking, you know, it just looked like a domestic's. You know, he was touching her on the tit. She said no, but she didn't get up and move.
I'm going to tell you something now.
Oh my God.
This lady had a few drinks that night, so she was a little bit intoxicated and she was taking the train home. That's what happened. And you get these fuckwits in this group questioning why she didn't have a car, why she didn't take an Uber, maybe she, you know, can't afford a car and all this sort of shit. Why does it always come back to class with these fucking people? You know what I mean? Like, why couldn't she just be a lady that went out on the town with her friends, had a few fucking drinks, and wanted to take the train home? What does it fucking matter whether she took a fucking Uber or not? There's a train for a fucking reason.
And this is the upside down.
Karen says, I'm sorry, but the situation in your post, a rape, domestic violence, a physical attack, don't those warrant the police? That's the gag. Angel says again, mind you, these are all white people. Everyone I'm showing you in this is a white person. A lot of black people didn't even fucking comment on this shit. I'm glad to say that most of the people who commented on this said, call the fucking cops, what the hell are you even talking about? So Angel says, and yet our call 911 rather than involve ourselves response frequently ends in more violence for POC, in more violence than the situation calls for. I think it might be time for a little... So this is an article from USA Today. There is no epidemic of fatal police shootings against unarmed black Americans. Ideally, officers would never need to take anyone's life, but the data on police killings doesn't support reducing or abolishing law enforcement. Really? I had no idea. The evidence doesn't support the charge that biased police are systematically killing black Americans in fatal shootings. Much of modern policing is driven by crime data and community demands for help. The African American community tends to be policed more heavily because that is where people are disproportionately hurt by street violence. In New York City in 2018, 73% of shooting victims were black, though black residents comprise only 24% of the city's population. That is fucking huge. I wish these women would stop fucking making these stupid comments on Facebook and actually do a little bit of research. How's that?
How's that? You missed the part, I caught you out. How's that?
Nationally, African Americans between the ages of 10 and 35 die from homicide at a rate 13 times higher than white Americans. 13 times higher. They're going on about how they're 2.5 times more likely to be shot by cops, but they're dying of homicide 13 times higher.
13.
Community requests also determine police deployment, and the most urgent requests often come from law-abiding residents of high-crime neighborhoods. Now, I grew up in Housing Commission, which is like the American projects, right? I know this for a fact.
I know this for a fact.
All the gangs and the drug dealers and shit that I grew up around, we all fucking hated them and we were all scared of them and we wanted more police presence. These fucking upper middle class white people, they don't know any of this shit. They just get online and spout nonsense because they see it on the fucking TV.
It's ridiculous.
Black respondents in a 2015 Gallup poll who wanted more police in their community were more than twice as high as the percentage of white respondents who said the same. Activists who seek to disband police departments will have to explain to these law-abiding residents that they will, in essence, just have to fend for themselves. Now, you get these idiots like Bree Newsom here, she goes on about it constantly. I don't think that's what she really wants. I think she says that for fucking attention and because she's made a career out of it. For the last 5 years, the police have fatally shot about 1,000 civilians annually. the vast majority of whom were armed or otherwise dangerous. Black people amount for about 23% of those shot and killed by police. They are about 13% of the US population. So that's almost double, but yet black homicides are 13 times higher.
So you do the fucking math there.
Ideally, officers would never take anyone's life in the course of their duties, but given the number of arrests that they make each year, around 10 million, and the number of deadly weapon attacks on officers, an average of 27 per day.
It starts right now.
In just 2/3 of the nation's police departments, according to a 2014 analysis, it is not clear that these 1,000 civilian shooting deaths suggest that law enforcement is out of control. They're booking 10 million people a year. Like, if fucking,
If they're exterminating black people,
why aren't there millions of black people dying each year?
The numbers don't make any sense, and these people are just stupid.
After investigations opened up into a media-grabbing instance of police use of deadly force in Baltimore, Chicago, Cincinnati, Ferguson, Missouri, and Riverside, California, there were almost 900 excess homicides and almost 34,000 excess felonies, their study found. Because what was happening is police just weren't doing their job. They're like, well, if I'm going to get fucking charged for assault because some dickhead wants to resist arrest and I've got to get fucking heavy with him, I'm going to get charged, fuck them. They weren't going around doing fucking stop and searches and all that sort of shit because it's voluntary. They don't have to do it. So they're just like, fuck it. You got all these dickheads out there bashing the police. It's no wonder they don't want to do their job.
Why the fuck would anyone want to be a cop now?
Cops pulled back from discretionary activity. It's what I was just saying. Basically, they just stopped doing the job. Cops are not mandated to make them. They don't have to do it, So they were just driving past areas where they knew there was gang activity, people selling drugs on the corner. They just kept driving. Like, fuck it.
it's not worth the hassle.
So just reading that, you can already tell that what these people are saying is fucking factually wrong. You could tell them till you're blue in the face that they're wrong. They will never get it. They will never admit to it. So there's just really no fucking point. So Claire says, it has been reported that people did intervene and 911 was called, the suspect was arrested and charged. Angel says, one off-duty transit employee reported it 27 stops later. 3 minutes later, he was apprehended at the next stop.
I can feel myself rot.
The assault happened for 8 minutes, right? Now, I'm not a mathematical genius, but that tells me that this assault was going on for 5 minutes before this employee seen it and then called the cops. So she was literally being raped for 5 fucking minutes before someone actually called the police. Now, why don't you stop this video, set your timer and see how long 5 minutes is. It's excruciatingly long if you're that poor woman.
These people are fucking scumbags.
Claire says, the point is many people intervened. It is more complex than first reports. Claire's living in a fucking fantasy world. One person intervened and he worked at the train station.
One.
The police put out reports that they got no fucking phone calls. No 911 phone calls about this incident except for the one. And that was from the employee. So the point is many people intervened. It is more complex than first reports is not true. That is flat out not true. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She hasn't bothered reading anything. And she's just on here making fucking assumptions. Kay says, it's a pretty low risk, comparatively, to tap your benchmates and ask them to help. That would be a near zero risk action. Unless he had a fucking gun. Rachel says, Rachel's a trans woman. She says, calling the police would not have interrupted the incident. Bystanders interrupting it would have interrupted it. Angel says, and yet it was only when 911 was called that it was stopped. Rachel says, I thought a transit employee intervened. My mistake. Angel says, off-duty transit employee called 911. You think it would have stopped there, but you were wrong. Rachel says, my point remains the same. Finding alternatives to calling the police is about creating stronger communities and empowering ourselves and each other to take action and interrupt incidences when we see them. I'm really sick of hearing this fucking vigilante bullshit. So what happens if you do break it up? He gets away. Okay, so what happens next? He just goes and thinks and goes, fuck, I won't rape another chick on the train. I'll wait till she's down a dark alleyway. At some point, the police need to be called and this person needs to be caught.
You vigilante fuckwits?
You don't know what you're talking about.
Rachel says that poor person had to wait for police to respond rather than a community at large interrupting violence. They see it. You're living in a fucking fantasy world. It's not going to happen. And coming from a trans woman, I would have expected more than that, because the trans community experience rape at far higher fucking levels than what the straight communities do. So I would have thought you would have been a little bit more empathetic than that, but...
We are dealing with the extreme fringes on the left, and they don't give a fuck about anybody.
Karen says, as the child of a DV victim, I won't put myself in harm's way. If I'm alone, it's too dangerous. If I know I will have backup, I'd like to think I would. I would 100% call the police in any of the situations you mentioned. That poor woman, how do you recover from that? Knowing people filmed it and uploaded it to the internet rather than helped you. Spot on. Pilar says, I intervene. I've been turned away by the victim because she was armed and assured me she was handling things.
Yeah.
I've faced off with arseholes homing in on a completely intoxicated woman more than once. I believe half of that. I don't believe for a fact that, like, so she went up to some chick and goes,
Are you alright? You want me to help?
and she's like,
No, don't worry, love, I got this fucker. I got a knife. You want to game me? Don't worry, love, I can handle this one.
I don't believe that for a second. But the second part of homing in a completely intoxicated woman, I do believe, because it's happened to my wife and it's happened to friends of hers as well. This shit does happen. You know, these women should be fucking saying, look, you call the police. If you see domestic violence, fucking, you let the cops sort that shit out. This garbage about the police are fucking executing black people. This is why society is as shit as what it is. These people need to be called out.
For the fucking nonsense that they're peddling.
You know, could you imagine, just imagine for a second if Angel was Angelo and he was a white man or some shit saying that. He'd be on the fucking View being like,
How dare this white guy say don't call the police to help a woman who's being raped?
that's what would happen. But because it's a white woman on the extreme fringes of the left, she just gets a fucking pass. Alyssa says, this isn't a property dispute. It's rape. Call the police. Angel says, and neither was the teen girls fighting in the street, and because the cops were called, a girl ended up dead. Alyssa responded, not the same. You're damn right it's not the same. She's talking about Micaiah Bryant. And I didn't want to do this, but I'm going to have to. This is my new segment.
Keyboard warriors wanna come at me. My white skin got you angry.
Here's the video from the Micaiah Bryant incident.
Hey! What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey! 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 Get down! Get down! Get down! Get down!
So you can see from that video, Micaiah Bryant had a fucking knife in her hand. She was in the process of trying to stab to death that girl. If you want to see my video on it, it's this one here, the Micaiah Bryant hysteria. You know, I go in depth about what had happened, why it happened. Like, basically, like, if you're slightly on the left, this has got to be your walking away moment right now. Like, I had mine with Alex Jones. The whole shit about Sandy Hook, I was like, that's bullshit. And then Pizzagate happened. I went, that's it. No more. I'm not going to be fucking lied to. I don't want my intelligence insulted. And I'm hoping a lot of you out there, a lot of you sensible left-wing people, are seeing this nonsense with Micaiah Bryant and looking at the facts and going, hold on, like, it's sad what happened. Don't get me wrong. You could never take that away. It is fucking truly sad that a 16-year-old girl tried to stab to death fucking 2 teenage girls. It's terrible. And she got her life taken. But we can't take away from the fact that she was literally trying to stab to death 2 other girls. It was a justifiable shooting. There's no fucking doubt about it. You know, George Floyd incident, he didn't fucking die of drugs. That was another thing that was my walking away moment with a lot of conservative media trying to tell me that he died of drugs, and I know they're just playing up to their audience. That's bullshit. He didn't die of drugs. He died because fucking Derek Chauvin left his knee in his neck. That's why he died. And I'm smart enough to know that these fucking people are lying because they got an agenda. And I really hope that the sensible people on the left saw what happened with the Micaiah Bryant thing and just went, you know, these people clearly have an agenda. Whether it is, look, I'm not saying they're trying to push communism. I think a lot of people are making careers out of this shit. The lady from BLM, Patrice Khan-Kalor, she's a multi-millionaire. She said she was a trained Marxist and how she believes in communism and all this shit, and just peddling toxic messages to young black people. Now, growing up, all you've got is hope. And how many young black kids would have dropped out of school and stopped trying because her message was basically, you're not going to make it anyway. I think the amount of destruction she's done and her group BLM have done to the black community is not going to really be known for a decade or two, of the amount of people who have just been left behind because they gave up. They gave up on trying to have a better life. And that's the sad part about it. And she really did it for clout and money, probably. Veronica says, in that situation, regardless of race, police intervention was required. There's a huge difference in white panic and actual danger. The reason why I read this one out is because of the way she spelled white. She spelled it W-H-Y-T-E. Now, I've also seen it spelled Y-T-E, and I wasn't sure as to why. And thankfully somebody asked, because I'm not a member of these groups.
They disgust me, if I'm honest.
Anthony says, why do you keep misspelling white as in white? Francis says, to avoid censorship. Anthony says, censorship from who and for what exactly? Now, Mahasin got back to him. Francis didn't, but Mahasin got back a day later. Facebook algorithms will count it as hate speech, and then you catch a ban and they will start monitoring the group because it's a public page. So these people know that what they're doing is hate speech. They know it. A lot of them are white. But there are a lot of black people in this group, and there's a lot of racism, man. Like, look, racism, it doesn't matter what fucking race you are, you can be racist, okay? There's a lot of racist people in this group and a lot of white people going along with it. I don't know why. Storm says, if someone is being raped, you call the police. Your priorities are out of whack if you are worried about profiling at that point. So that was white people doing something again. You can see the level of detachment with these people, and I've always tried to tell people, look, what we're seeing is not a race issue. It is a class issue, okay? Because if it was just purely racism and it's a race issue, it would only be affecting black people. You know, it's like the laws they're saying are racist and stuff. It's affecting everybody in the lower class. You know, like, I'm from the lower class. I can tell you firsthand that we're all in it together. People outside of the lower class, the ones that had really good families and stuff like that and went to really good schools and grew up in good areas, they don't understand what it's like coming from sort of where I came from. They don't get it and they'll never understand that. I think a lot of these white uni-age sort of kids are starting to see that, you know, their privilege really stems from their parents, you know, and the banker mum and dad closed along with their fucking shop due to COVID. And I think groups like this, I don't think there's a future in it. I think we're starting to see the decline now. I know, look, a lot of people are fed up with it. I am too. Constantly reading this shit. And this is just an observation. I've noticed personally, a lot of the people stirring this shit up are white women. Now, I don't know why that is. It's not all just white women, but the large majority of these groups on the left and the right are full of white women. Now, maybe that's our fault. Maybe, you know, we haven't allowed women to have a voice at home and, you know, this is the only way they feel heard or something, because things are getting pretty out of control. Well, they were for a while. And anyway, so look, that was white people doing something and their silly fucking views on
Rape.
And yeah, see you in the next one.